A definite matter of urgent national importance regarding the implementation of the CBC student transition. First, I want to thank the Speaker for allowing this motion and also the House for supporting it so that we can be able to address this motion. Now, Honorable Speaker, as enactment of the competence-based curriculum continues, the Pioneer CBC class is expected to transition to grade 9, commencing in January 2025. However, this transition has caused increased apprehension among parents and widespread concern on the preparedness of the education sector with regard to the transition. Of importance in this matter is, of course, infrastructure, which was initially, Mr. Speaker, meant to be lodged within secondary schools, but then when the new regime came into office, His Excellency the President came up with a presidential working party on education reforms, which recommended that this transition remain in primary schools. So junior secondary schools are domiciled in primary schools. Now, additionally, the practicality of putting up classrooms and other facilities like laboratories by December 2024, before the start of grade 9 lessons in January 2025, is in doubt. So at present, the transition is also marred with the issue of a shortage of junior secondary teachers, crucial for the success of this program. Now, Mr. Speaker, it's against this background that I want to encourage the House to discuss this matter with a view to exploring possible solutions and advise the key players, stakeholders, and the country at large on what we need to do within the period that is still remaining before these children end up in that position. Mr. Speaker, I want to point out first that the grade 8, which is going to grade 9 next year, are the pioneer in CBC. And Mr. Speaker, if you remember, these children, when they came from grade 6 to grade 7, they did an entry exam. And Mr. Speaker, all schools were not entitled to carry out CBC. So these children, some of them had to travel for many kilometers, because what the Ministry of Education did is that it collapsed. A few schools were allowed to provide junior secondary, while others were not. In my own constituency, Mr. Speaker, there was almost up to 5-6 schools that were feeding into one school. So what was happening, Mr. Speaker, is that there was serious congestion. And this is what we are worried about. This is what we want to make sure that we don't want to fall into that trap. Mr. Speaker, this is the fact of this matter. That in January 2025, we will see almost 1.5 million students that are in grade 8 transitioning into grade 9 in over 32,000 primary schools in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, that is only 3.5 months away from now. Is the Ministry of Education prepared for that transition? That is the matter, and that is the reason why I have thought that it is important for this House to discuss this matter. What do we require, Mr. Speaker? We require 32,469 classrooms. And that is only on the assumption that every one of the schools requires only one class. There are schools with 5 streams, with 3 streams, with 4 streams. So we are probably requiring almost 60,000 classrooms. Mr. Speaker, do we have the classes? And if we don't, what are we going to do so that we can have them in the next 3.5 months? Mr. Speaker, we also require, because this system requires laboratories. It is no longer just the normal schools. We require to have laboratories put up so that they can be able to carry out some of these subjects like integrated science, health education, pre-technical, there's things like agriculture, there's things like home science. Mr. Speaker, all these require a laboratory. And Mr. Speaker, there is a possibility that even one lab in a school might not even be enough. But then the minimum one lab means that we require 32,469 labs in Kenya in the next 3.5 months. Mr. Speaker, are we prepared? Mr. Speaker, we also require teachers. And the teacher issue, Mr. Speaker, is one of the most notorious problems that we have. We have talked about free education for a long time. Even primary schools, we say we have free primary education. But you go to most schools, you find there are not enough teachers. So the parents have, on a regular basis, got to contribute to pay for teachers. Now, when parents are paying for teachers, how then do we call that free education? Because education is basically tuition, which is the payment for teachers to be able to provide the service. So the minute parents are paying teachers, it means that that education is not free. Even free secondary education, Mr. Speaker, we don't have enough teachers. Now we have introduced junior secondary, we don't have enough teachers. The problem of teachers is not just the numbers, Mr. Speaker. Even the competence of the teachers is also of concern. How many teachers are prepared in this country to be able to teach these subjects? Our graduate teachers, Mr. Speaker, they are taught to teach 2 subjects. Maybe English and literature, Kiswahili and CRE, geography and business. That is the kind of training that we have in our universities today. So who is going to teach integrated science, health education, pre-technical, sports, all these subjects, Mr. Speaker. And to compound it even further, the CBC, in the wisdom of the ministry, they have, instead of reducing the number of subjects, they have condensed the subjects and combined them. That means that there are subjects that are being taught and offered to be taught in our schools that have no trained teacher, not in Kenya, not in Africa, not in the world. There are some subjects that have been combined. There is no one technically capable of teaching those subjects. But every day, Mr. Speaker, the bell rings and someone walks into the class and teaches. What professional qualification do they have to teach these combined subjects that are putting together 3, 4, 5 different subjects that require different skills and different training? So, Mr. Speaker, we also have the challenge of teachers. So, Mr. Speaker, what do we need to do? I think, Mr. Speaker, today I would want to encourage that members try and offer solutions. And I have a few that I want to offer. Because I know, Mr. Speaker, that education is the future of this country. In fact, that is one of the reasons why the youngsters came here and wanted to take over the house. Mr. Speaker, because we must do things right, not just for the Gen Z, but even for the Gen Alpha and the ones that are yet to be born. We must make sure that we do things that are going to make this country competitive in the community of nations, so that our graduates from Kenya can be able to contribute in this world. So, Mr. Speaker, what solutions do I offer? First, let us expedite the release of funds. Mr. Speaker, as we sit here, there is even money of CDF of last financial year that has never been released. And members would have probably put up some of these classes. If the money is not released to members, or rather to the constituencies where members can go and oversight, then that means that we have a problem that is still growing. Mr. Speaker, there was also money that was supposed to be also allocated to the Ministry of Education that was supposed to be helping to put up the classes. That must be expedited. Any debts in the Education Ministry must be cleared immediately. Mr. Speaker, secondly, we must increase the budgetary allocation for the Ministry of Education for purposes of solving this problem. Mr. Speaker, this is an emergency. When we had COVID, we spent billions. Now we have MPOX a year, there's 6.5 billion supposed to be spent. We can spend any last cent of Kenyan money to solve this problem, because we don't want our children come January to be loitering the streets because there are no classes. I know the ministry is likely to create a situation or a solution. What they are likely to do is to combine classes. Standard 1 or grade 1 and grade 2 be put together. That means you are compromising quality of education. Or children are told to walk long distances to a school in the distance, somewhere far, where they probably have larger class sizes. So, Mr. Speaker, I believe that the solution is to provide money. And that money must come from the budget. Even if it means this house reallocates some money, we must look for money to be able to provide a solution to this problem. Mr. Speaker, I want to just advise the ministry that every time someone is appointed to be minister or a new regime comes into place, you don't have to come up with a new education system. You know, in 2013, we were treated to an issue of laptops, that every child going to grade 1, standard 1 would have a laptop. Today, those children are in university. They never saw a laptop. After 2-3 years, they saw a tablet. Those tablets are not even there. They were bought 1 year, they are destroyed, there was no planning. This is a ministry that plans for the future. We must plan for education. We must make sure that we put our things right so that we can be able to provide solutions and to help the country.
The MP for Seme.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we are in a crisis.